guys, and welcome to Faewood. So this is the final video in this necklace series. We're going to do some final bits of beadwork and things to the piece and construction and things just to finish it all off. So I wanted to add some beads to the center of my little butterfly slash fairy wings, and I chose these really nice blue clear beads. I thought they looked really nice, and I'm really wanting to reinforce that deep blue color, so I decided to go with that color. I'm finally using some of the Hercules thread in actual beadwork, which is what I bought it for. Now I did a number of stitches over the top of the fairy wings just to make sure that they were nice and held down. I want to make sure that they're really strong, and I don't want them to move because it's thin wire, so the more thin wire bends back and forward, the more chance it has to snap. So I really want them to stay in place. And I did do just a little bit of beadwork here and there, mostly to cover some stitches and add a bit more detail. Now for the green colours, I went for a really deep tealy sort of green and some emerald greens and things. My idea was to make a little bit of a bead soup here and mix together some different sizes of greens and different colours, wanting to do a very free-form stitch work over these little vine fringe work pieces at the bottom here. I did put some around the base and then, you know, kept it quite open. I didn't want to cover up the vines. I really like the way that all of these silk and wool and things look, and so I want to keep that exposed and just add detail work to it to accentuate it. This is definitely a challenging thing to bead because of the shape of it, so I was trying to find anchor points through the thread work itself, so pushing the needle through where I could and connecting the beadwork where I could in this sort of web. It's very free form, there is no stitch to this really, it's just trying to connect a framework of beads around this piece where I wanted them. And the trick is really trying to make sure that you put the right number of beads on so it lays nice and flat. Sometimes you have to adjust it, and you know, I did often have to add a bead here or pull it out and, you know, add a different number of beads and things. So don't worry about that. It is a bit of trial and error sometimes with that. The thread I used I wasn't entirely happy with, if I'm honest. I wish I had have used a darker green thread, but I couldn't find any at the time, so I went with this lighter green. I mostly want a thread that you're not going to see if by chance the beads do allow the thread to show a little bit, so that's always my goal. I do my best to try and match thread, or at least have a colour that won't stand out. A lot of my earlier work I didn't take the time to do that, and I regretted it. So you can see I'm working my way up to do a spiral of beads up, but what I'm doing is like just doing a stitch and then beading, like stitching through the vine and then continuing up, doing a stitch through the vine, and then I'm connecting that spiral as I go back down the vine again. It's just a way for me, it was a way for me to connect the beadwork more easily to the vine itself, and then I could just fill in the gaps as I go back down. I hope that makes sense. So having different colours and shapes of the beads for this sort of beadwork really helps add to it looking very natural and realistically from nature. Now, if you remember, when I did this clasp, I didn't like all of the mess of wire work that was around this end, and I knew I was going to do some beadwork over the top of this, and I did a similar thing where it was very freeform, same sort of bead soup mix, and I just tried to make sure I covered what I wanted to be covered, but not being precious about how I stitch it at all, keeping it very freeform. Another way you could do this would be to create a bead cap. You know, you could use, say, a peyote stitch or maybe a right angle weave or something like that, and create a bit of a bead cap over the top of it. That would be totally fine as well. And then I decided to put a little bit of beadwork just where the two really different sides of the necklace come together as a way to connect the two. I was thinking I was going to do more beadwork along the vines and things than I did, but I really liked the way they looked. I really felt like they looked like moss. I love the look of the fibers. I often feel that way. I always sort of go in thinking more beadwork the better, but then the more I go along, the more I'm loving the fibers to speak for themselves, and I don't always feel the need to cover everything in beads as I would originally have done. I like to have the different textures, and there's just something that, you know, a difference in the way that the textures look that can't be achieved by beads. So I do like to use them where I feel like they should be now, and I really try to be a bit more critical about where I think the beadwork should be. And again, I put some of those same blue beads in the center of each of my little fairy wing sets there. Partly it's to cover the wire, I guess, but also I just like the look of it. It's almost like a little will-o-wisp or something. You know, just for me it makes it look a little bit more fairy-like. And then I'm adding the clasp on the other side. So this is from that toggle clasp that I was working with, and did some adjusting on the other side. I'm just using that same Hercules thread, so a nice strong thread, and I go through the beads as many times as I can fit the needle through, basically, because your necklace is only as strong as its weakest point. So I always do my best to make things strong. And now it's time to add some backing. So I'm adding my Jewel Bond glue on here, which is just like a PVA. And then I've got a piece of dark blue ultra suede that I'm using, which is only just big enough. I hate that they make all of the ultra suede that you buy from bead shops so small. I wish it was an A4 size, honestly, but there you go. I buy a lot of mine from eBay now because you can get in big sheets. And I wanted to add some stability, so I was concerned about the strength of these butterfly or fairy wings. I knew that they needed to be held into place so that they wouldn't snap or, be moved around too much, because they are delicate. They're not going to break too easily, but if they got some wear to them, then they would definitely be have a tendency to break, and I would hate for that to happen. And to add even more stability, I decided to put another layer of the 3D lacquer on, and then I put these little micro beads into the center of each of the wings, just because I like the look of it. And my lovely little unicorn scissors that I love so much. So trimming it up, and just that same sort of brick stitch edging that I often do. I have two types of edging. Sometimes I do one that sort of lays like a line. I don't even know what you would say the stitch is. It's very similar to a brick stitch, but you just go through. I might have to do it one time. It's hard to describe. But I quite like this brick stitch method, and it's one that I think most people use when they're edging like a cabochon or what have you. But if you go through the bead in a different direction, they will form more of a line instead of each of the beads standing up. I don't know if that makes sense. Now again, I wanted stability, so I'm all about trying to make things a strong necklace or a strong piece of jewellery that won't come apart. So I added some more fibres underneath the wings, again, so they wouldn't move. My goal is really to make them stay put, because as much as I like some necklaces to have a bit of manoeuvrability, and I will put wire in it for that purpose, these are just too delicate and they just need to stay put. And here's the finished product, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have. It has allowed me to try some new techniques. We got to try the shibori silk. We got to do some fiber work, which I've done in the past, but then I got to try the dip resin. It's just been lots of fun. I'm so happy with how it came out. I am sure there'll be another necklace coming very soon because I love having one on the go. Subscribe if you want to see what happens in another project. And for the rest of you, I'll see you next time in Faewood. Bye, guys.